Hello, welcome to Gospel in Action. Here in the first half of this chapter, we will see Jesus showing his miraculous works by feeding the multitudes with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And later, he would show his power even over the nature. So stay tuned to study this amazing chapter with me. Let us start reading from verse 1. After this, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. And a large crowd was following him because they saw the signs that he was doing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand. We have seen in some of the previous videos that Jesus needs the right kind of faith from his people. The faith that believes before seeing the signs and wonders of God. Yet there were and will be people who follow Jesus because they saw the signs and miracles that he does. Now, in this video, we will see how Jesus treats this kind of crowd. We will see his compassion even towards them. But by the end of this chapter, we will see Jesus driving away many of those people who do not have the right kind of faith by the truth that he speaks. They would walk away by themselves. In verse 66, which says, after this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. We will learn in detail when we get there on what truth did Jesus speak that drove away the crowd. For now, the crowd did follow him. So he went up on the mountain and sat there with his disciples, with the crowd all around them. It was the time of the biggest annual feast, the Passover. Jesus was about to do one of the greatest miracles apart from his death and resurrection. And this was the only miracle that was mentioned in all of the 4 gospel accounts. Let us find out what it is. Let us continue reading from verse 5. Lifting up his eyes then and seeing that a large crowd was coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Now, here Jesus had been teaching the crowd all day. So as the crowd was coming toward him, he was having compassion for them, knowing that they walked a long distance to follow him, either to hear him teach or to see and experience the signs and wonders. Jesus also knew that they had not eaten anything the whole day and were hungry. Realizing that they were not near any big city to find food, Jesus asked Philip, "Where can we buy bread to feed all these people?" To test him. Notice the important word here. Jesus tested Philip, although Jesus knew what he would do. You may now ask, what need does God have to test his people, right? Does he not know everything about all his creation? And why did he ask only Philip and not anyone else? Jesus asked Philip this question because Philip could have been the logistical coordinator for all the missions of Jesus during his time. He might have been the responsible person to feed all the 13 people, including Jesus, while they were journeying from town to town. Jesus could have also asked Philip this question because Philip was from that area and knows the area better than anyone else. Coming back to the context, Jesus did not need Philip's help at all because he knew how it was all going to be turned out. Jesus knew that he was going to feed all of them with good food and feed them to their heart's content. Then why test Philip, right? Jesus wanted to educate and instruct Philip and also the other disciples. Did you get the point here? God first wanted us to recognize where our level of faith is. That is where we stand in our walk by Spirit. Do you remember? We are supposed to walk by faith and not by sight, and walk by spirit and not by flesh, right? Paul said this in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 7 and Galatians chapter 5 and verse 16. And once we have identified where exactly we are, and after we came to terms with it, that is, after our helpless confession, God wants to train us to walk in His will no matter what the situation is. That's the reason why He tests us. Remember that God does not test us to evaluate us or to merely get the job done. No, God is much more capable to get the job done, but He tests us to teach and train us to walk in His will under any circumstances, so that we develop in character and become great disciples along the way. This is very important for us to understand God's character. So evangelism is important not only just to bring unbelievers from the darkness into the marvelous light, but also for us to develop as individuals to know God more and more, and in turn to do the work wholeheartedly with love as partners with Christ, as said in 1 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 9. So, through all of this, we need to understand that God knows what He is doing. His desire is to build us, make us holy and blameless, so that no one would ever question God later on why He would bring non-sanctified sinners into heaven, even if they are justified. So sanctification is the most important part of our whole salvation process. Anyway, let us see Philip's response in verse 7. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for each of them to get a little. Philip immediately begins to calculate in his mind. He figures out that so much bread would be needed to feed each of them a little. 200 denarii would be about 7 to 8 months of wages of an average working man in that day. You know what? All that impressive calculation that he has done in his mind was in fact all useless. Do you know why? First of all, they did not have that much money, and there was no time to go into the nearest town, buy all that bread and transport it to where this crowd was. It was not a practical thing to do on the spur of the moment, as it was not a planned meeting at all. So this was a huge problem. So Philip understood about the problem, but he did not understand anything about the solution. Do you know what Philip should have said? A person with the right kind of faith would have said like this: Master, I do not know how we are going to feed these many people today, but I do know that you are greater than Moses, whom God used to feed a multitude every day for 40 years in the wilderness. And so I believe that God can do a lesser work than that through a greater servant like you. He should have said, Master, you are greater than Elijah, whom God used to feed many people in need. I also know that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord, according to Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 3 and Matthew chapter 4 verse 4. And you are great enough to fill this multitude from the words of your mouth. This should have been his response, but he failed. Note that it is okay to fail. Jesus was only teaching him. At that point in time, Philip's faith was not yet there to be able to speak words like that. But that is where God expects us to be in our journey of faith. Anyway, let us continue reading from verse 8. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they for so many? Then one of the other disciples of Jesus, Andrew, introduces a small boy who only had 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish. Again, in his lack of the right kind of faith that I was talking about over the past few videos, said in disbelief, what good are they for so many people? Andrew was in fact right if we look at it from the worldly perspective. Just 5 loaves and 2 small fish for 5,000 people? Does that even make sense? It was as if Jesus deliberately initiated this discussion among them for them to witness the scope of the miracle that he was about to do. As I said, it was to teach them the lesson of faith. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 17 and verse 20 that if you have faith like a grain of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. People do misuse this teaching of Jesus to achieve their goals according to their wills, but we must learn that there is a caveat that Jesus teaches. Look at John chapter 15 and verse 7, where Jesus says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. The author John himself clarifies more in 1 John chapter 3 verse 22. He says, and whatever we ask, we receive from him because we keep his commandments and do what pleases him. And in 1 John chapter 5 and verse 14, he says, and this is the confidence that we have toward him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. So, according to these verses, yes, nothing in this world is impossible for us. If we are abiding by Jesus' words, keeping his commandments, and asking in faith only according to God's will and not according to our wills. Please make this point rooted in your hearts whenever you ask God anything from this moment. Anyway, let us conclude by looking at Jesus' response and his action. Let us read from verse 10. Jesus said, have the people sit down. Now there was much grass in the place. So the men sat down, about 5,000 in number. Jesus then took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. Jesus was in no panic or hurry. He calmly made the 5,000 people sit down on the nice grass field in an orderly fashion. Then there was this big miracle that took place. Jesus then took those 5 loaves and 2 small fish and created baskets full of food out of the thin air after he had given thanks to God. This was unbelievable. What stands out is the fact that Jesus thanked God even before the miracle took place. It was like him saying to God, Father, I have 5 loaves and 2 fish, and I thank you for providing this food to feed more than 5,000 people. All Jesus had was a little in the face of a great need, but he was thankful for what he had. So Jesus not only thanked God for what he had, but also thanked God for what it will become. Jesus knew what God's will was and asked him according to his will, and it was provided to him. Most importantly, unwavering faith is what was needed as well. It was a teaching to his disciples then and now to us. Likewise, Jesus is thankful for us, not only for what we are, but also for what we will become. Did you ever think about that? Anyway, after this, he distributed all that food to those who were seated, and everyone ate as much as they wanted to their heart's content. Jesus did this without any fanfare and commotion. For the matter of fact, the people who ate the food did not even know where the food came from. Let us read verses 12 and 13 and close. And when they had eaten their fill, he told his disciples, gather up the leftover fragments that nothing may be lost. So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten. Jesus made the disciples to distribute the food and later asked them to gather the leftover fragments. Notice that Jesus wants nothing to be wasted. That is the principle of good stewardship of God's resources. And the disciples miraculously gathered 12 baskets of food, which was initially 5 loaves and 2 fish. Just imagine what was going on in the minds of these disciples. Jesus did this miracle to demonstrate and train his disciples that he was the one to be trusted, that he was the one they should cling to and follow. If you believe that Jesus really did this miracle, don't you want to give your life to Jesus and follow him? Pray about it. Thank you again for watching.